Good morning and welcome to OTB AM. A very happy Pancake Tuesday to you, and so much to be excited about today on the sporting front as well, because the Champions League is back. We've got Juventus versus Spurs this evening, and one of the games of the round, really. We're going to be building up to that between now and 9 AM this morning. In terms of other things to be excited about today, we've got Tadhg Furlong in studio. He sat down with Ger and myself yesterday for a pretty long interview. It's very interesting. It's coming up your way after around 8 o'clock. But the thing I'm most excited about this morning is that Nathan Murphy's in studio. Good morning, Nathan.
Well, you're easily pleased.
Yeah, I know. Welcome back.
I thought it was Pancake Tuesday that was getting you particularly excited.
It really is. Deep down, I'm a pancake man.
Have we had any pancakes arrive in yet?
Not quite yet. We might have had a crepe or two because, you know, we live in a notionsy part of Dublin here.
Oh, well, Tommy Rooney, our producer, worked in a creperie when he was a little bit younger. Did
Really?
you know that?
No, I didn't know
He
that.
keeps that to himself, yeah.
Wow,
He was
okay.
asked about his favourite pancake. He said he's more crepe man.
I didn't even know there was any creperies in Mayo. Or in Meath, rather.
Meath, I'm not sure where he found the creperie in Meath.
Yeah, I don't know.
Meath is full of creperie, I would say.
Is there any creperies in Mayo?
I'm sure there is. We've got a little bit of everything down in Mayo.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the reason why we've got you in the seat actually this morning. Because
Crappy Crepes, he tells me it was called.
Crappy
He set
Crepes.
up his own Crappy Crepe company in transition year.
wow, we see the American version of lemonade stands here in Ireland, and that is creperies basically. But as I say, the reason why we've got you sitting there in the venting seat, as I like to call it, the people who sit there every morning just tend to vent and talk a lot of crap. And
Well, there's no expectation on me is the good thing in this seat.
exactly. Basically, you're not quite happy with what you perceive to be an anti-Mayo bias on OTB AM because, you know, there's never any Mayo bias at all on Off the Ball.
No, well, I was just a bit frustrated watching on last week, considering you as a Kerry man, a rare trip up the country for any Kerry supporter.
Well, I live in Dublin.
About 20 of you went down to Castlebar to watch
Not quite.
Mayo against Kerry, and suddenly you're upset about actually coming up against a vociferous supporters who actually make their feelings felt, who like to cheer on their players. You're upset about this. Why?
I was not upset about a vociferous support. That certainly wasn't the case, and I think you'll find that we were very vociferous ourselves. It was actually more to do with the manner in which they were vociferous and the things they got glee out of. Like, do you get glee out of seeing opposition players kind of fail more than your own players succeed?
Yes.
Right, okay, is that a Mayo trait, would you say?
I would say, well, because we always know our own joy is only going to last so long, whereas your pain could last forever.
Yeah, I guess that's true, yeah, it's a very good point.
So what, you're saying that Mayo supporters celebrate an opposition wide more than they do a Mayo point?
They certainly celebrate opposition wides more than other support celebrates opposition wides, bar maybe the Dublin support.
So you're saying that what, we should take a leaf out of the Munster rugby supporters playbook and have respect and silence when the Kerry players are standing over the ball in all of your 37 All-Irelands?
Well, yeah, you know, I think there's never anything wrong, you know, bowing down.
Put down the red carpet even though you were beaten in last year's All-Ireland semi-final?
Replay, yeah. I mean,
Get it.
The first time in, you know, 21 years that I wouldn't have
What
gone
did
that
you
way.
want? Like, what would have made you happy?
I'm not a big fan of, you know, kind of sledging, first of all, and the way that gets celebrated within the stands. I'm just, you know, not happy with the level of glee that people get out of other people's failures. That's all. I'm completely fine with a vociferous support, which Mayo are. I mean, like, they claim to be the best support in Ireland. I'm sure you'll support that claim, and
It's not really a claim.
you believe it to be the truth.
Well, who rivals Mayo for support?
Well, I'm saying that they can certainly lay claim to being the most vociferous support, but whether or not they're actually the best support and the people you'd like to be sitting alongside in Croke Park, I think remains to be seen. So that was the issue. That was the thing you took most issue with last week.
I was a bit peeved about that, yeah.
Yeah,
But I'm here now to set it straight.
But then later last week, of course, the agenda changed when Lee Keegan went on the record to talk about a very dirty hit. And of course, what happened in Salt Hill on Sunday seems to have moved the agenda on a little bit further, to the point where we've seen Cillian O'Connor and Diarmuid O'Connor both sent off.
Well, Carl O'Kane had a great line in the Star today where he said the Mayo-Galway match was like an Ulster Championship war, which is the greatest compliment you can now give to Connacht football, which was downtrodden for so long. But look what they're serving up now. Listen, it got out of hand on Sunday, but two passionate teams.
Yeah.
Cillian O'Connor probably shouldn't have done what Cillian O'Connor did. These things happen.
I think that's fair to say. Do you miss it a little bit when you're obviously a Premier League commentator and you don't get to see what has now become amazing league games? And I know May 13 clashes with the Premier League game as well.
Yeah, it doesn't. So I just record League Sunday, but watching League Sunday, there's so many games and the highlights are so short. So suddenly it goes from being 4 points to 2 to 10 points to 6, and you have no idea what happened in between. So you don't get any real sense of it. Yeah, but everything is building up to May 13th. final day of the Premier League season. And what's worse, which ordinarily sometimes you wouldn't mind because, you know, it could be at the Etihad, it could be at Anfield or Wembley or somewhere for a title decider. No, I can see it now. I'm going to be at the Liberty Stadium for like Swansea against Stoke or something.
Or the Hawthorns or somewhere like that.
Relegation survival.
No question.
My God.
Yeah,
while the game of the summer takes place.
Yeah, that's not great. I mean, the thing we're going to talk about now, like we'll get into the Premier League a little bit later on because you're watching West Brom against Chelsea and indeed that relegation battle, which is turning into, which I thought, say a month or two, certainly a month ago was very fascinating because there was only 3 points separating the entire bottom 10. That seems to have been scuppered a little bit now because of how crap West Brom were last night. But we'll stick with Mayo for just a moment because, of course, your favourite man in the world is David Brady. He was on Off the Ball last night.
Legend.
He was talking to Joe and he was talking about Aidan O'Shea and what he called the disgraceful targeting of O'Shea.
Now, yesterday it went overboard on both teams, but there's a steeliness and a toughness to this Galway team. Now, there's a roughness as well, and I for one, and I'm saying it, I think it's an absolute disgrace that the way Aidan O'Shea is getting treated.
Go on.
And I'm taking him as a player every single game. Now, what happened, what Killian did was wrong. And you know what? He needs to learn from it.
Yeah.
But every single game, you watch it, you see it. He has been absolutely pulled, dragged and battered. And you know what? I probably, if I was an opposition manager, I'd be nearly saying, you know what, boys? Go at him again. He's on a yellow. He was on a yellow yesterday when there was 2 Galway players booked. They went at him for one single reason only, to get him sent off. Because he was on a yellow. But it wasn't through a nasty, it was through a yellow card tackle. You know, it wasn't a punch or a slap or a sly hit. Every single game he's getting like Mayo played 8 games, or there's been 8 players in the last red carded against Mayo.
Yeah,
he is, and I go on. What happened besides that was there's no place for it.
But you think there's a fairly concerted effort to?
You know what, Joe? It's not
leave things on O'Shea.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
And would I focus on him? I remember John O'Mahony saying to me, John O'Mahony became my manager, and I said, John, when you were manager of Galway, like, what was your tactic with me? He said, to be honest with you, David, we kind of we singled you out. We thought you could have been got at. And I'm going like, I loved that. I loved when I had players like Sean O'Donnell coming and trying to knock runs out of me. I played better. I didn't retaliate.
He's got a point.
He clearly has a point, and Aidan O'Shea is this totemic figure in the Mayo side that teams are automatically going to focus on, even more so now that it's been pretty much proven you can get away with it. And it's probably not just Aidan O'Shea, it's any guy who's 6'3", 6'4", built like Aidan O'Shea is. Referees feel they can take hits more than smaller players can. So I wouldn't be surprised if Mayo were to come out and start making more of an issue of this to try and put more focus around it so that maybe they can start getting some players punished for what they're doing to Aidan O'Shea. The problem, I think, watching Mayo so far is, so you look at the other player in intercounty football who's maybe most targeted at times, is Diarmuid Connolly. So Diarmuid Connolly quite often reacts and you get the spark out of them that you want. But also it doesn't seem to affect the way he plays the game. So while he may get yellow carded and the odd time he might get sent off, by and large,
it's out of his system.
It's out of his system, but he goes and proves a point and he'll play out of his skin. Whereas I just sense watching Aidan O'Shea at times, he's bloody frustrated with it at the moment. He's distracted. It is actually getting to him. So, like, Mayo need to figure that out. Where are they going to play him? Do they put him in at full forward and almost keep him out of trouble? Which sort of worked at times against Kerry last season. Cian Hanley coming back may shift his role in the team as well. If Cian Hanley can come in and make some sort of an impact, which again might be expecting a little bit too much. I just think it's incredible again that we're here talking about Mayo.
Yeah.
There's just a never-ending story about Mayo, and Aidan O'Shea is quoted. John Fogarty in the Examiner today has a very good quote from Aidan O'Shea, and this is from last October, talking about 2018. You can probably write what next season's going to look like for us already. Up to the championship. We'll win games in the league that people expect us to lose and lose games that we should win. There'll probably be one hammering and everyone say, that's us done for the season. We're going to have boys back late, boys in Dublin who won't be training with us. When we get to championship, we'll be a different animal.
Like, it's complete crystal ball stuff from Aidan O'Shea there. And I would put Kieran Donaghy circa 2015 into that area as well of players that get targeted. And I do think there's a point in it. But I think now that the fuse has been lit, and this has been said over the last couple of years, this Aidan O'Shea thing will become a huge thing, and Mayo support, people in the Mayo camp may even feel a victimisation complex around this, which is never a good thing for teams chasing their first All-Ireland in this player group.
Or maybe you get some sort of a siege mentality. It has got to the stage, though, where nobody seems to have any sympathy for Aidan O'Shea, no matter what happens to him. Even all the fallout from Kieran Donaghy flattening him in the All-Ireland semi-final
he stamped...
I probably deserved it. I was winding him up. Well. It's like, no, I punched him straight in the face.
He wasn't winding him up, he stamped him.
Pushed him straight in the face.
Yeah, well, like, kind of winding up would have been a verbal thing, wouldn't it? Which may or may not have been worse. At least, with Aidan O'Shea, it was a physical thing that riled Donaghy up, which personally I prefer, clearly.
I just think everyone in Mayo needs to calm down a bit. Like, the last time I was down home was around Christmas, and everyone was writing off the league and don't want to see the player. We don't want to see Lee Keegan for the league campaign. We don't want to see Andy Moore and Cillian O'Connor. Give them all a rest. And now that they've lost 2 games in a row, it's complete panic stations. Is Stephen Rochford the right man? If they lose on May 13th, that's it. This great team, they've come to an end. They're never going to win an All-Ireland. It's fine. It's the league. They're missing Brendan Harrison, Keith Higgins, Chris Barrett. One of, if not the best full-back lines in the country. Lee Keegan, one of the best footballers in the country. Last season's midfield, haven't played a game yet. Last season's Footballer of the Year, Andy Moran, hasn't really been involved. It'll be fine.
Yeah. One last thing on that. Lee Keegan's comments last week when he says that it was a very dirty challenge by Ronan Shanahan, it just didn't seem like a sensible thing to do, because there's always the inevitability in Gaelic football that Diarmuid O'Connor could clothesline a player, and by not any malice, just like Ronan Shanahan wasn't being malicious in that challenge, that a player goes low and a tackle, Diarmuid O'Connor clotheslines him, gets a second yellow card, gets sent off, and then you have the Cillian O'Connor thing, which is a blatant red card. And it just seemed to me that why would Lee Keegan say that sort of stuff when there's such a high possibility that it could bite him in the arse?
Well, I think the reason he said it was that there was a huge amount of frustration within the Mayo group about what had happened to Evan Regan, that you can say it was clumsy, that it was accidental, and that it wasn't malicious what happened to him. But he did end up needing treatment. He did end up in hospital needing an operation for what happened to him. So I'd imagine that there was maybe just the frustration of that and being in and around the camp and seeing that. But it was always going to come back to haunt them in that what happened with the 2 O'Connors. And actually, looking at Mayo, the one issue I would see right now is maybe around Cillian O'Connor and getting his focus right. All the time the talk with Mayo is they need to find a new forward. For me, what Mayo need to win All-Ireland is Cillian O'Connor to be the Footballer of the Year, to get back to where he was 4 or 5 years ago. And I do just wonder, watching him and the frustration at times last season and the frustration he showed against Galway, we can't underestimate the psychological impact what's happened in the 2 last All-Ireland finals has had on Cillian O'Connor. I can't think of any other footballer in history who has had the opportunities he's had and unfortunately hasn't been able to take them. Like, to be able to get over, and I know he's strong-willed and mentally he's tough, but still, to miss frees in the final minutes of an All-Ireland that ultimately end up costing your side, like, that can't leave you easily. Yeah. So I do wonder if there's part of that is building up inside of him, and he's not focusing on his own game, he's focusing too much on getting involved in all this other nonsense. Just get back and kick 10 points in a game.
But it's the perfect arc, isn't it? The whole villain to hero thing. So if you're putting money basically on Mayo to win the All-Ireland, you may as well sweeten it by putting it a double on Cillian O'Connor to win Footballer of the Year, is what you're saying.
Well, the great thing is, like any conversation about Mayo, any time I've had spoken about Mayo for 5 minutes, I leave it fully convinced that they're going to win the All-Ireland. Well, no matter how depressed I am coming into it, by the end, everything seems okay.
It is literally just a league, and we know what Mayo do when it comes to the summer. May 13th, already a date on the diary. I might just tell you what's coming up on today's show, by the way. As I've already said, Tadhg Furlong joined us in studio yesterday for a studio interview. That's coming your way at around 8 o'clock. Juventus versus Spurs, the big game in the Champions League tonight, one of the ties it around. James Horncastle will join us at around 8:30 to preview that one. We'll also chat about Manchester City with him, and maybe a little bit on Antonio Conte as well. Is he now safe in his job? Are we finally going to get Conte versus Jose Mourinho in the Premier League, which is good news from us from a neutral perspective. We look ahead to the day's Winter Olympics events, look back at the madness that happened yesterday in terms of wind and the real-life danger that occurred in Pyeongchang. And I might just mention as well, before we get onto the back pages, what did actually happen in Pyeongchang this morning from the Irish, because Seamus O'Connor was out in the half-pipe. He was Ireland's flag bearer, you might have seen on Friday. He missed out on a place in the final in that event. He was just one place off the 12 qualification spots after a promising first run, and then he fell during the last trick on his last run, and he finished 18th overall, so he's unfortunately out of the picture. Skier Pat McMillan is in 61st position after his first run in the Alpine combined. Thomas Westgard finished 70th in the cross-country individual sprint. And as I said, the Backpages, I think they're starting with Spurs today.
Yeah, pretty much all dominated by Tottenham. The Examiner Lady Killer is the headline and the picture of Harry Kane. Spurs hitman Kane sets sights on shooting down Juventus in Champions League. Says he's been having visions of scoring goals in Turin tonight. Similar story in the Mirror and high praise for Harry Kane. As good as Messi, Italian legend Chiellini put striker Kane on the same level as little Barca magician Ronaldo and Neymar. And in the Sun, up and away, City miracle man Sané on plane to Basel. He was meant to be out for 6 or 7 weeks, but miraculously, Leroy Sané is back after just a fortnight.
It's amazing. It's absolutely sensational. Obviously, those young bones heal very well, and Leroy Sané will be back. Pep Guardiola is also carried on the back of the Herald this morning. Pep reveals Euro doubt. The City boss is unsure if they can win Champions League outright. While on the back of the Racing Post, it's also Champions League stuff. The famous five reads the headline. Trophy favourites Manchester City lead Premier League assault on Europe. While on the back of the Irish Daily Star, they're going with the Chelsea angle from last night. Aidan rifles. Brilliant Hazard double eases the pressure off Conte. You've also got GEA Powers probe Melee, which is an investigation into what happened between Galway and Mayo in Salt Hill on Sunday afternoon. And then finally for me, it's Chelsea again. Hazard lights the way for Chelsea. Dominic Fifield's match report at Stamford Bridge saying the Belgian helping to restore some confidence after a recent rough patch. That's in the Irish Times.
Yeah, similar story on the back of the Irish Independent. Hazard lifts the blues is the picture on the back. Furlong confident he'll be fighting fit for Wales. We'll hear from Tadhg Furlong in a moment that he's hopeful that that hamstring injury isn't too serious. And also Dub star O'Callaghan sets sights on adding Sigerson medal to Hall. This is the story that Conor Callaghan hoping to feature for UCD in the Sigerson Cup this week, which is quite interesting considering several of the stories inside the papers are about player burnout and playing club games, playing inter-county games and playing college games, where it seems as though Conor Callaghan, perfectly happy after helping Coola to the All-Ireland final at the weekend, wants to get out back involved with UCD in the Sigerson this week. In the Times, the picture, the very sad picture on the back page of the Times of Ireland is Miller makes his final journey. Lee Miller's coffin carried at his funeral in Ovens in County Cork yesterday. Also Ringrose in race to be fit. Centre yet to return from ankle injury as Henshaw championship ending shoulder surgery. Stuart Lancaster saying it'll require a big step for Gary Ringrose to be fit for that game against Wales on Saturday week. In the Mail, Chris of Life, Ireland turn to Farrell as the injuries mount. So Munster's Chris Farrell in pole position because of the injury to Robbie Henshaw and the recovery of Gary Ringrose. It looks as though Chris Farrell is going to go straight in at the deep end, and Hazard takes the heat off Conte. And again, at the back of the Guardian, it is Eden Hazard and Chelsea. Blue Monday, Chelsea ease pressure on Conte as Hazard ignites champions. Also some Champions League in there as well. Harry Kane has no fear of Juventus.
Yeah, we'll ask James Horncastle about how terrified Harry Kane is of his next coming together with Giorgio Chiellini, because of course his debut I think was in Italy
For England,
I mean, and Chiellini took him out of it. I don't actually recall the game, but James Horncastle might be able to help us recollect that. But Chelsea last night, pretty good.
Yeah, it was a very strange game. The first 10 minutes were absolute chaos. Daniel Sturridge lasts 3 minutes and he's off with a hamstring injury. Went down under a tackle. He's now played 90 minutes once in the Premier League in the last 2 seasons. And the problem for West Brom is they brought him in, they're paying huge wages, that he was going to get the goals to keep them up. And you've got to look at him and wonder, can Alan Pardew trust him? Like, can you trust starting him? Jay Rodriguez comes in as a substitute. First touch of the ball, gets absolutely clattered by Cesc Fabregas in the penalty area. No penalty. Goes straight down the other end. Craig Dawson, 2-footed high challenge. Straight red card. Not given. So that was complete chaos. But then Chelsea just took over. Eden Hazard, just on his day like that, you start thinking he is the best player in the Premier League. And you do wonder when you watch Hazard playing like that, like with Chelsea struggles, is he the agitator? Or is he the victim of Chelsea's struggles? Is he the one who's looking at all the nonsense with the manager thinking, I'm in the prime of my career and I'm having to put up with this? Or is he actually the one that he decides if he's in the mood, Chelsea play well, or they don't?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because even just watching some of the early stages of the season, when I know Chelsea didn't start great, but when Morata was in his hot streak, what was that, around October, November, and just watching them in one of their Champions League games, it wasn't the one that it was away to Atletico. When they won there, and you look at their front three, and you look at Hazard, you look at Morata, and you look at Pedro, and at that time when Morata was on fire, you're like, this front three is exceptionally good. Like, it's almost as good as Manchester City's. And now to say that in February just seems absolutely laughable.
Well, Pedro's incredibly inconsistent.
Yeah.
He has these spells of 6 weeks where he looks like he's back to his Barcelona best. Hazard, I think, is in the top 2 or 3 players in the league, and Morata's obviously having a dip in form. Olivier Giroud started last night and decided to go full on Diego Costa. He was in bits by the end of the game. He had the Terry Butcher wrapping on the head. He was blood out of his knees. This was a very different Olivier Giroud than we saw up front for Arsenal. He's putting his body on the line and his hair ruffled.
On the opposite end of the pitch, Shane Long, the drought goes on.
Oh, yeah. So I was at Southampton, Liverpool on Sunday. Exactly a year for Shane Long and 1 goal. That's the problem for Southampton. It's one of the reasons I think that themselves and West Brom are in huge trouble. They spent, I think it was 15-60 million quid on this guy Guido Gorillo, signing him from Monaco. Hadn't scored a huge amount of goals for Monaco. Madness of the transfer market that they're spending that much on him. Barely got a sniff at goal, and they've 4 strikers. I'd imagine between Shane Long, Gabbiadini, Charlie Austin and Carrillo, they're probably paying up on 300 grand a week on strikers, and not a single one of them can score a goal. So I think Southampton are in quite a bit of trouble.
I think they're going to go down. Like, I mean, you look at Swansea's resurgence, which is bad news. Like, you look at Carvalhal coming into the Premier League, and you start to think to yourself, this guy's got no Premier League experience. That's one off the list. They're going to get relegated from the Premier League, and that's suddenly turned on its head. You look at, I don't know, Huddersfield, you look at Southampton particularly, and as I mentioned there, we will get into Liverpool a little bit later
on. It's so tight though. 2 wins, and suddenly you've taken this massive leap up the table. So with those 4 strikers for Southampton, one of them has a 1-month spell where they score 4 or 5 goals. Like, that could be enough. So it's suddenly Huddersfield, I thought Huddersfield were looking doomed, and then they go and destroy Bournemouth, and then you're questioning Bournemouth, have they got the toughness to survive? So I think that's, unfortunately, where most of the drama is going to be between now and the end of the season. Yeah,
as I say, we'll touch into that a little bit later on. You actually had a bit of trouble getting back from Southampton Liverpool at the weekend, did you?
Well, I set my alarm an hour late, so I woke up 10 minutes before my flight was leaving.
Did you make it?
I did. I just got up, put on the clothes, ran across, security, straight through. The flight was closed, everything. But the very good people at Flybe, very nice people at Flybe, stopped the plane, opened the door and let me on. You can imagine the looks I was getting on the flight as everybody's been sitting there for half an hour in the freezing cold.
Presumably some of them going to work or having business
it was all full of business people.
And you just held them up.
Scruffy old me straight out of bed, rocks in.
So if you had a business appointment yesterday and there was somebody late who was travelling from somewhere in the UK, it was Nathan Murphy who held them up.
Sorry about that. All my fault.
We're going to move on. We're going to move on to Tadhg Furlong. He was with us in studio. He was speaking at a Vodafone event reminding fans that we are all part of the team of us as Ireland face Wales in the upcoming NatWest Six Nations fixture on February 24th at the Aviva Stadium. Vodafone knows the team extends beyond the 15 players to include a support network of coaches, family, friends, backroom staff and of course the 6 million fans on the island of Ireland. We all belong to the team of us. Visit the Vodafone Ireland Facebook page for all the latest Team of Us news. Here's how our conversation went.
All right, a bit of rugby for you now. Tadhg Furlong is here. How are you?
Good, thank you.
No, literally, how are you? Everybody wants to know.
Good, thank you. So felt a bit of tightness in the hammy. More of a precaution. You probably don't want to stay on and risk the further injury. So feels good, and extremely hopeful for available for selection for Wales.
All right, so because with hamstrings, it's everything from like a career ender in Paul O'Connell's case to it's grand in a couple of weeks, and no one ever really gets to know until you test it out again. Is that how it works?
I suppose you can never count your chickens before you hatch, can they? So obviously you have to see how it responds to treatment, but it was only a little bit of tightness, and it feels good.
Yeah. When that happens 3 or 4 minutes into a game, are you like, oh balls? Like, obviously you build yourself up. It's the whole hype, and you want to test yourself against the Italian front row, and then you don't get a chance to.
Yeah, a bit anticlimactic, I would have said. Probably feel sorrier for Andrew Porter having played 77 minutes. It's not overly hectic for a tight head prop, but it's kind of a weird one. You're probably built up all week, mentally, physically. You get to game day in 3 minutes, and you're out. So it is what it is. And
does it change your preparation at all so it doesn't happen? Like, do you have to be aware of it now that it's happened? Or you?
Yeah, you probably do with the rehab, but it's not a major issue. And as I said, I'd be highly confident of being available for Wales. So you have to tick the boxes and make sure you're not putting yourself at risk of further injury. And just go through the process. Do
you get to enjoy a victory when you spend 77 minutes on the bench as much as everybody else seems to get to enjoy it?
It's kind of a weird one. Obviously, you have a responsibility to try to clear this up as quick as you can. So you're icing pretty much the whole night, really. And
you're not dancing with all the rest of them then, wherever.
No, I'm not much of a dancer. I'm more of a finger wagger.
Perfected in the foundry over many years, was it?
The foundry's in Carlow. I was more of a stores, Wexford Town back in the day. Yeah. But look, you look after yourself as best you can. So that means, taking care of yourself nice, and so be it.
Yeah, so it is a bit weird, and you do feel a bit separated from everybody else who's like, they've got the momentum rolling, 2 wins from 2, and you're like, oh balls, I've got to go and take it easy tonight.
Oh yeah, but it's the nature of the game. I think there's the bigger picture. If you want to, maybe have a few drinks and cause inflammation and extra bleeding, take that risk. But I think you're a professional at the end of the day, and you want to get back on the pitch, and you're hopefully getting back on the pitch in Wales, so you can't really do that.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. We have spoken before with Walter Walsh on the show, who reckons that you and him could have been international rugby teammates, or could have played against each other at inter-county level in a bunch of different sports. Was he as good at rugby as we're maybe being led to believe in that?
Well, he was a hell of a rugby player, to be fair. He played a lot of out half for us underage, I suppose, with New Ross, and he could boot the ball a country mile and control the game very well. Obviously, athletically very, very strong, and good body spatial awareness from the GAA. So, Wally would have been in sort of the very early stages of the picking up in the southeast before you get to Leinster underage squads coming from the youth system. And it's probably at a time for him where hurling was probably taken off as well for him with Kilkenny, and he probably never fully got the shot at it that I probably would have done. But if he maybe got those chances and opportunities, and hurling wasn't there, it's a different conversation maybe.
Because he was saying that there was actually one day where there was a clash where a youth's training session had been scheduled and there was a hurling match on. He just went to the hurling match, and that was kind of the end of the rugby career. And those sliding doors happen for a lot of people in sport. And it's funny how those decisions kind of, ultimately he's not in any way, he was an all-star, things worked out for him.
Yeah, I think he's doing well enough, to be fair. He's a few All-Irelands in the bag, an All-Star. I'm pretty sure he's not contemplating what if I didn't do this at 16 years of age. And to be fair to Wally, he's top of his game. Watch him in the league, and last time got beaten by Wexford in the Walsh Cup final, which is probably a sore point for him. But no, he's a top hurler, to be fair to him.
Yeah, and again, your pathway to the international team, it's not the traditional pathway, but it's good to kind of start seeing these stories emerge on a more regular basis, because the first one happens, and I think Shane Horgan might have been the first international to come through the youth setup, and everybody hopes that that's not going to be an isolated case, and we're seeing it happen now every 3 or 4 years, and even a bit more often than that.
Yeah, it's probably the road less travelled, and it's probably down to the amount of coaching the schools get now, where they probably come out of the schools athletically, and the amount of coaching hours that go into them are massively high, where in the youth level, as much as there is a huge amount of work gone in, there's a huge amount of investment into the player pathway, that you just can't match the time spent that the schools have with their players and the coaching available to them. And that being said, because of those pathways that are now set up within the underage system in Leinster, we're picking up talent, and it's good to see them making their way into Irish under-20 squads, Leinster under-20 squads, and pushing on into the academy and hopefully on to further things.
How long does it take to actually catch up on the lads who have been through the school system?
It's hard for me to say, because I've been out of school. This is my 8th year out of school, so it's, how do you quantify it really?
When did you start feeling comfortable, I guess?
It was hard for me because I left school and I probably had a massive chip on my shoulder. I hadn't really touched weights properly didn't really understand a massive amount about my body, and you know, it takes 4 or 5 years, 4 years maybe. For me, I felt to get up to scratch and strength levels and the durability levels and stuff
Was
like
the
that.
chip on your shoulder because you hadn't been through the school's pathway that you kind of felt like these guys, it looks like it's all set up for them and you had to fight your way? Is that what the chip was?
Yeah, you probably feel like you're underdog, and you probably think certain things about lads from Dublin when you grow up in the country that when you look back now you probably think are a bit naive, but at the time you firmly believed it, and it's what drove you on, and you thought maybe these lads got forwarded more opportunities to you, and you know they thought they were better than you because you come from the country and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that's the case now at all, but it's the way I felt back then.
Yeah.
Do you think that there was a benefit by the fact that you were essentially just let out there to go and play? You mentioned that you didn't get into a weights program, but that says to me that you weren't in a regimented system where you were being told to stand in line and do this. You were just allowed to go out there and play, and like essentially that's what's got you to the top, essentially, is the fact that you're a ball player who can play in your position very well.
I think you can probably argue pro or against.
Yeah.
I probably spent less time with a ball in my hand, or you know, tackle technique and ruck technique and line-outs and scrums, and you know, I'd say if I look back and even under 20 clips of me scrummaging now, you'd be, you know, shocked, and just the level of coaching you probably get. It's through no fault of the clubs, you know.
No, of
the
course.
school system itself,
Yeah.
you know, is
Full-time strength and conditioning coaches,
Yeah.
6 rugby pitches, you know, and a century of tradition.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what it probably did afford to me was, you know, I didn't have to make the decision early that I want to be a rugby player. You know, you played a lot of GAA, you maybe pick up a bit of spatial awareness, hand-eye coordination, and you know, I suppose when I left school and then I got into the sort of sub-academy, into more of a serious training program, and into the academy, you see massive leaps in, you know, your physical, like your body, your skill set, and all these things are new to you, so you kind of grasp on and you can see yourself getting better and better and better, and it's kind of exciting. It drives you on then a little bit to know that you're going to work every day and you're getting better.
Like it's an interesting one, just even on a mental element of that you were never kind of told that you have to become a rugby player if you want to be a success, you have to be a rugby player. Like say for example Walter maybe was living in kind of an environment where Kilkenny hurling is the be all and end all, whereas you went to the same school as Kevin Doyle, Aidan O'Brien even years before that as well, so becoming a Leinster and Ireland rugby player wasn't the be all and end all, and potentially that lack of pressure is a huge benefit.
Yeah, maybe. You probably don't think like that at the time. You think, I love playing rugby, it's great crack, and probably body shape doesn't suit to play hurling or football, to be fair, and you had a knack of, you know, you like the physical stake and the stakes of it, and you just happened that you were a decent clip at rugby, so it kind of accelerated and fell into place for me as I started moving through the ranks.
You are a YouTube star, though. There's a brilliant video of you playing underage GAA as well. I think this might be under 16.
There you go.
Who's this against?
He's against St. Martin's. That's under 14 final.
Under 14.
Under 14. 12-year-old Tadhg. Just popping around the place with his white boots and socks up.
12. Yeah, had notions.
I love those boots, lads. Furlong number 3 on him.
All right.
Used to take out the kickouts with the outside of my foot. Thought I was the right fella.
But you were, that's the thing. Yeah. At 12 to have the cockiness. So you wrote your name on them, or that you could...
No, do you know, it was just
get
when
stencils.
Like Pro Direct Rugby used to bring out where you could personalise your boots with the stitching. So I thought I was Jack the Lad going around the place with my white preds.
Oh, you were, it turns out.
Yeah.
Did you win that game?
We won that game, yeah. Don't ask me to score now. Good win for the parish, to be fair.
Yeah, no doubt. It's interesting though as well that like a lot of those, maybe some of your contemporaries who were told, oh, you're going to play for Leinster, you're going to play for Ireland, that you did have that chip, which ultimately means you have to continuously improve yourself, and that's not a bad lesson to have as a 16, 17, 18-year-old picking up a sport, because if you have that, you never really lose it, right? I expect you're still the same person now who's like looking at your opposition and other players in your position around the world going, well, maybe people are saying he's better than me at the moment, but that's not going to last for long.
Yeah, I don't particularly target I want to be better than him, because how do you measure it? You know, it's intangible. What you can control is, you know, when you see yourself training, or when you see yourself playing games, or, you know, deep down you know yourself if you're working hard as you can, if you're complacent, and, you know, if you're doing your nuts and bolts to help the team, and a lot of the stuff that maybe you can't see on the pitch, but deep down you know yourself, and, you know, that's what drives me on, really. And I probably had an inferiority complex coming on through the age grades, and maybe there's just a little bit of that lingering where... Not
a bad thing, I guess, is the point I'm making, that actually it's not the worst thing to have as somebody breaking into a team.
No.
Or would you much rather have been, would you be even further down the line now if you were like, look at me, I'm a superstar?
No, I don't think that'd sit well with me. Or it's probably just not me to be doing that sort of stuff. I think it works for me. I think there's a degree where a small bit more confidence at times would probably be good going through the age grades and playing professional rugby. But I suppose it's something you come to understand. It's who you are, and this the way you work, and this is what works for you.
Do you have that confidence now?
You still have a bit of that, where you want to get better. You don't want to fool yourself, so you're letting down your teammates. Like, you don't read into a massive amount of things people say about you, however nice they are, because you know yourself that you've areas you want to improve on, to be better. And it's just always that niggling voice inside your head saying you need to be better at that, you need to be better at this. That keeps me going, that drives me on.
Do you get confidence from the fact, though, that, like, if you play well, you know you're going to be a strength for your team, that it, you know, you're not there to break even, you're not there to kind of do a shift for 40, 50 minutes, that actually, if Tadhg Furlong plays well, Ireland and Leinster will benefit from that?
Yeah, I think because I'm a tie head prop, that means the scrum is after going well, that we have a good foundation to play off. It means, you know, I'm working hard around the pitch. I'm not, you know, being lazy and losing a few seconds here and there and slow off the ground. It means, you know, our maul or line-outs after going efficiently, and they're the little bits, your nuts and bolts, where you get confidence out of. And look, I'm not being a complete downer on myself. You know when you have a good game, or if you're looking at tape and you see you're after doing something well, like, I know I'm after doing that well, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And that gives you the confidence to maybe quieten the voice, or do you want that little voice there to go and keep you getting better?
Well, you're never going to play the perfect game, so you're still able to see where you lose a second on the ground, or, you know, you didn't get up and move to where you're supposed to go, or hold fold, or something like that. And they're the stuff then that you can, I did this well, but going into the next training session, I can just fix this up and I'll be a better player. And as the years roll on, and maybe if you look back at, just say you're playing Wales next Saturday, you look at the World Cup warm-up that I made my debut in, and you look at the player you were then and you look at the player you were now, and you can see definite improvements, and that's what you get satisfaction from.
Has there ever been a game where you've come off the pitch and you thought to yourself, right, that was close to perfect? I'd imagine maybe the All Blacks, particularly when at the stage of your career that game arrives at.
Yeah, obviously when there's a good result and you think you played well, you're happy, but I don't think you can get perfection. I think everyone's striving for perfection, and like some games you come off and you can know yourself, okay, I played bloody well today, and, you know, I performed well and I helped my teammates out, but it's probably more of a rarity, I would say.
And when you say there a couple of moments ago that I could have improved this or I could have improved that, and you're maintaining that at the moment, is there any particular things that are a constant recurrence that you're always looking at and you think that needs to get better and better and better? Yeah, for me, I think, you know, my line speed, consistently getting off the line. Sometimes I can find myself in midfield and they might have a bit of shape coming at me off 10, and, you know, I sit down and wait to see what they're doing so I can make an informed decision of my tackle. But, you know, if I can keep coming up there and putting pressure on my tackle selection, been working on, you know, when to hit up as a second man, or when to bounce out and try to get a bit of width in the defensive line, and around ruck and carry, I'm trying to work on at the minute, dropping your height and carry. I feel sometimes when you're carrying the ball now, you might have two defenders coming at you, and in the ruck, just making sure I'm really aggressive every time.
I read too somewhere that the first scrum at international level was against France, was it? Was your first Six Nations game against France?
My first...
Yeah, you came off the bench and...
Yeah, it would have been, fourth, fifth cap maybe or something like that, maybe.
And that they just did stuff that you hadn't experienced up to that point, and you're like, what the hell is this? Like, that's kind of the whole point of being an international rugby player as well, is you just have to, okay, I've seen this experience before, I remember it, I'm cataloguing that. Yeah,
so the thing you have to remember is when you're a rugby player, or especially in scrummaging, I can't see what you're looking at. So all I can do is feel what's happening. Obviously, you're looking down to the ground, sometimes your eyes are closed, you're pushing as hard as you can. So you're trying to gauge all these different feelings. And the more sort of games you play, the bigger the catalogue of the feelings happen. Or you gather a bigger catalogue. So the next time I go out and play, then you match that feeling to the video you see after the game. So next time I'm previewing a scrum, I might see something that I've seen before, and I know the feeling in the scrum, so I can work to solve it.
Even just kind of like how...
Yeah, so I'm doing that.
No,
so it's all... I'm just doing my chest. So obviously you have a hooker here, loose head here, and where the weight's coming from, how to manage it, and counteract it. And a lot of the time, you're not working on your own, obviously. You're working... scrummaging is one of those things where you're wholly depending on everyone around you. Yeah.
But your body shape is kind of perfect for tight head, right? That actually... Yeah. It's... Because we had...
Emmett Byrne.
Yeah, we had Emmett Byrne in, and he was just saying that, like, the way that you're built is perfect for the tight head to lock stuff down, but also then to be a bit aggressive about stuff, no matter who's coming in, if you're getting crap from both sides, that actually...
Yeah, it's again, it's subjective, isn't it? You see New Zealand have quite tall props. South Africa would have tall, big props. And it's all shapes and sizes, to be honest with you, and it's more your technique and how you scrummage, and different tight heads scrummage different ways with different... Some are shouldery, some are chesty, some attack at angle. I would be a chesty, square scrummage and tight head. So, yeah, square on, use both shoulders with a big chest, where you'd see some... And I scrummage quite long with my feet, so I can sort of put downward pressure with my chest. Where you see some tight heads, Dan Cole, for example, from England, would be... If you look at the angle of his legs, it'd be more near 90 degrees,
right,
and he'd use more of his shoulder scrummaging.
Is he trying to pop you up? Is that what his...
He would be keeping it down at tight head, yeah. But it's just a different way of scrummaging, and whatever works for you.
What sort of body shape in a loose head and hooker do you like to see when you're coming up against them?
I like it nice. Because the thing is, you train so much with... Our loose heads are quite square as well, so you get kind of used to a square loose head. So you see a square loose head coming up against you, you know
what they're going to do.
Yeah, you've more of a bank of feeling and vision on that. So you find that, and that's the challenge in training sometimes. I find when we're leading up to a game for Leinster or an international game where you don't want to be scrummaging against the same loose head for the full week. You need to switch it over now, because you can't get in a repetition of doing the same thing against the same fella where you need a different picture.
And is there much of a difference between Jack McGrath and Cian Healy? There is. Yeah,
there is. Yeah, little traits. By and large, the scrummage the same way, but then every loose head or every tie head would have their own little kinks that they do. So I'm not going to say
who's better,
in case Warren Gatland here is watching and finds out a few tricks. But yeah, there is, and Dave Kilcoyne's no different. James Cronin was an Irish camp, no different.
Yeah.
It's all little tricks that, and that's over the course of a game, is to kind of the story of the scrum. One team might get a descendants for a while, the other front row sort it out, and they reconfigure, talk, wait to solve it. And
how important is the second row in this whole process as well?
It's the massive, isn't it? So if there's 8 people in the scrum, your front row only make 3 of them. So 5/8 of your power is behind you.
And if your specific one is obviously very important then as well, because that's the direct thing that you're getting.
Yeah, so they say a tie head lock is massive. Where you might see the tie head lock is traditionally the bigger man, the stronger man, because I'm doing my fingers, so you're scrummage against the hooker and the loose head, and the tie head goes right in between.
Yeah.
So tie head, loose head, because he's one side of his head covered up. So you're essentially pushing against 2 people. So
you need someone.
In theory, you need the stronger man behind you.
Yeah. And And so, does it matter at the moment in the Irish camp? There seems to be there's proper competition in that second row as well.
It's a matter of being comfortable with it. I think a lot of the lads are good scrummagers with good body awareness.
And is Henderson or James Ryan behind you mostly? It would be
James Ryan for France.
James Ryan was against France. Would you be James? A lot of it is the locks. James Ryan likes being a tie head lock. He likes scrummaging. So
he's a big lad.
He's a big unit, to be fair to him. Yeah, and so he tie head lock, which obviously I have a partnership with him and. No, it's mad to think that even the smallest change in his bind or how much he tips forward with his shoulder can have an influence on me. It's like the scrummaging is massively synchronized thing.
Yeah, because obviously I think back in the day it would have been frequently you would kind of wait and come back a little bit to try and get a bit of imbalance, and then it goes down and it's like, oh, it had nothing to do with us. I mean, we were there, ref, you saw us. So you have to work in concert. You can't just do that on your own.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Not that it still happens, obviously, but
it's never the prop's fault, is it? So it's the other team. It's your fault, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
It's massively synchronised and important, yeah.
Are like getting away with dark arts in the scrum, is that a thing of the past now?
Thing of the past, yeah. I used to hear my father be saying when he was playing rugby, different generation, different era, and he'd been saying about fellas biting ears, or the second row would like reach his bind, slip his bind and punch the prop in the face. But he just...
Yeah, because we had Mallow Kelly in last week, and I asked him what's the best thing a second row can do in a scrum, and he just went like this, and like I presume it's happened.
Never seen it. Never.
Not even in New Ross?
Maybe we used to black hard back in the day, but...
You were the ones doing it.
Yeah, the Ross boys. You don't really see it in the modern game, or there's no place in the modern game anymore. Or even if you were to do it, you're massively risking putting your team down to 14 men, which is just nonsensical nowadays.
Yeah, it's going to get called out again and again and again. When you were 12 playing under 14 and playing fullback with your name on your boots, did you dream of playing for the Lions and playing for Ireland? Was that like equally there, or was that all about...
I just played because I liked playing sport. It didn't really matter.
Hierarchy of dreams, like it wasn't a...
No, I think in the winter I always loved rugby and I always dreamed of playing for Ireland. And to be honest with you, it probably was rugby that I always loved, but hurling and football weren't far off, and I didn't have set training patterns, and my father didn't take me out one-on-one coaching or anything like that. It was just go out and play and have the crack, and it kind of all fell into place for me, really.
And the progression seems to a lot of people on the outside to have been really quick, from sub in the World Cup warm-ups to getting the cap to getting in the Ireland team to like nailing down that place to going on the Lions tour. That all kind of happened really quickly to the point where you're starting on the Lions. It seems to the outside world that it is overnight, but as you say, it was kind of years in the making.
Yeah, and you spend a lot of years in the academy, and I had a few nasty injuries there that kept me out for a long time. And at the time Leinster had Mike Ross, obviously pillar, Nathan White was there, Jamie Hagan was there, Marty Moore, and then me. So there's 5 tie-head props. So when I was coming through the academy, I never did a coaching session under Joe Smith when he was in Leinster. It's only when Matt O'Connor came in that I actually trained with the senior team. And I suppose you're plugging away there for a good while, and you have to remember, Mike Ross was Ireland's starting tie-head. He's a hell of a scrummager.
Yeah.
Marty Moore was ahead of me then, and 2 Six Nations title, good scrummager, and playing really well. And you have to wait your chances, and when they come, I suppose you have to take them as well. And I've been lucky that way, and coaches have shown faith in me, and Joe picked me to go to a World Cup with basically no experience, to be fair. And I suppose what you learn there is how the system works and what it's like to be around likes of Paul O'Connell and stuff like that, and then you can sort of bring that into your sort of game going forward for the next few years, and then it just sort of happened.
So when you get to the Lions and the selection happens and you're in the squad, and then you realise that actually you've got a good shot of playing, and then you get named in the team, there's no inferiority complex at that point, right? There's just okay, let's go. This is the All Blacks at home.
Yeah, you probably don't have much time to think, especially not the Lions tour, because just boom, 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 boom. It's so fast-paced and go in all the matches, and you just go for hell for leather. It's your job. Let's go out and do it.
Did you enjoy that? Like, is that...
It's tough.
Is it?
It is tough. It's... If you think of a normal... What I struggle most on the Lions tour, if you think of a normal training week, for us, we'll train a Saturday game, we'll train Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Wednesday off, Sunday off. And in those Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday sessions, or Thursday session, not Friday, but we train 15 on 15. We'll have 30 lads on the pitch and we'll be running through simulations and situations and stuff like that. But the Lions tour, you rarely had it because there was 2 teams playing. And just your whole build-up and preparation to big games was totally different to what you were used to. And even in your down day, usually when you chill out and relax and just unwind a bit, you were travelling, you were packing bags, you were heading on an airplane, you were getting to a new hotel, new roommate, unpacking bags, and it's just it's very full on. There's a lot of work involved, and that being said, like the camaraderie between the team and everything you experience, and you know, you're fighting against what seems like everything, against your chances of winning, and you're fighting against them, and you know, that's the pleasing bit.
Do you remember minutes or moments from the games at all? Like, are you somebody who actually kind of thinks, right, there's 74 minutes gone here, we're playing against the world champions, we're going to beat them? Are there any of that? Like, do you remember?
Yeah, not really. I think sometimes I look back, or when you're in the game, it's just happening around you, and a lot of time you're just reacting to what happens.
Yeah, which I guess you have to be to be in a flow state. Otherwise, you're like, oh Jesus. Oops,
yeah, you probably don't get to sit back and take much in or think about stuff. And I suppose in my position, I'm just doing my job. I don't have to really worry about, you know, how's the flow of this game going? Do we need to pin them back here like a 10 or a game manager or 9 would have to do? So, you know, I'm just focusing on, you know, doing what I have to do and probably not worrying about a whole lot else. And so because of that, when you look back at the game, you're like, geez, when did that happen? Or you can't remember that.
For the first time a bit.
Yeah, some of it, because you have to remember at half time when I'm rucking out, I'm on the ground anyway, so I don't see what's happening behind me. So sometimes when you're watching back a game, you see a different game sometimes.
Yeah, and from that Lions tour, like, what will your overriding memory be, and what's that full-time whistle like?
I suppose the full-time whistle was, what the hell do we do here? Who lifts the cup, or how is this working out? And
penalties.
it's what happens here, and you know, you're so close yet so far, and you know, you draw with New Zealand. It's, if you asked the probably public before you went out, I'd say most would have taken it, but you know, as a player, it's so close yet so far away. And I suppose my abiding memory from it would be, it's probably more off the pitch with the lads, and you know, just bonding and meeting new people and having the crack and sharing ideas, and you know, they're the sort of special memories that you'll remember.
Yeah.
Who was your best mate out of the Ireland cohort in that tour?
Best mate, I suppose I got on quite well with Sinks, Kyle Sinclair, a funny guy. There was a few others. I got on with Mako Vinopola and Tadhg Furlong, Fellatau as well. They were good guys, good crack, and you know, they're always bouncing around the place and a bit of messing and stuff, so I enjoyed that.
And come the Six Nations now, you have to go and try and kill them.
Yeah, if I know Toby's nursing a bit of injury, so I don't know if he'll be available or not, but yeah, that's the beauty of sport, isn't it? And I suppose you're kind of used to we're so close to the other provinces, but then the players in the other provinces, but then you go out and try to kill them in a derby match as well. So there's nothing unusual there.
Will you get any downtime or any time away from because the Six Nations now, we're in it, and it feels a bit crazy, and everybody's rolling at the moment, and the fans are definitely believing that this is our year to do the Grand Slam. I realise I'm not allowed to mention that in front of any of the players, but like, do you get a chance to just go away and not be thinking about rugby for a while?
I think you try your best to, like, today's a down day. We're obviously in Athlone until Thursday, so you have a sort of a long weekend there, and you know, it's encouraged that, you know, when we're on, and you know, when you're away, you know, you're trying to mentally refresh, because you know, it is tough, and you know, international rugby is tough physically, but it's also incredibly tough mentally, and you know, it's important to get that sort of refreshment in. And you know, sometimes it's easier said than done, where you know, the game's in the back of your mind, or something you want to improve on is on the back of your mind, but you try your best to do it.
And are you doing that watching sport? Are you doing that how do you switch off?
Depends really. I'd like to be alone. I'd like to not talk to anyone, and just do my own thing, potter around, or watch a TV series, or just do something like that. Or I'd like to go home and see my family and friends around Wexford, and my girlfriend, and just completely unwind, where you're not going to get too many questions, or they know you. They're not going to plaster you, or they know if you want to be left alone, they'll leave you alone. Yeah.
Well, listen, thanks very much for joining us. It's been a remarkable ride so far, but it feels like there's like a fairly serious, significant chapter still to be written in this.
Yeah, I hope so. And luckily I've been pretty much injury-free for the last 18 months. So I just try to keep the body on the field and keep trucking, really. So thanks for having me on.
Best of luck.
Tadhg Furlong there, speaking to Ger and myself yesterday afternoon, with thanks to Vodafone. Remember, we all belong to the Team of Us, and visit the Vodafone Ireland Facebook page for all the latest Team of Us news. A couple of comments in about that. Aidan Connolly's been in touch to say, love that chap, the world hasn't enough of them. Dean Aaron was asking, will Tadhg be fine for Wales? I think he will, Dean. He certainly said on his end of things that he will be fine. Whether or not Joe Schmidt will deem that to be the case remains to be seen. And Muris Masio Kunakur, apologies for absolutely slaughtering your name. Masio Kunakur, the size difference between the two lads, took a screenshot but can't attach. Thank you very much for pointing that out. I think 2-to-1 was the ratio you came up with.
It's similar today, I think.
Well,
almost.
I'm not sure if you're on the guns level.
It's intentional though from Tadhg Furlong is the only difference. What a likeable guy.
Unbelievable. One of the good guys, and just so easy to talk to, even off air and stuff. Completely the same. That nice guy is not a facade, basically, when you see him on screen. So, once you chat to him, you kind of wish him all the best, and it's great to see that he will be back for Wales, or at least he will definitely be in very, very close contention.
Yeah, I'd say he'll need to train early next week. Seems to be the general rule of thumb with Joe Schmidt. If you're on the training pitch Monday and Tuesday, you got a chance.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's the other question about Gary Ringrose, will he be back training early next week? Because it's vital for him to be back on the training pitch if he's going to make it.
It'd be a huge risk, wouldn't it? It'd be a very on-Schmidt-like risk to take against Wales, to throw Gary Ringrose, who's played very little rugby in recent months, straight in at the deep end, especially when there's Henshaw's out for the entire tournament. So you keep Wales, maybe you give him the game against Scotland, or you keep Ringrose, get him the game against Scotland, he's back full fitness for the game against England. Throwing him in against Wales seems maybe a risk too far. Yeah, well, that remains to be seen. We might come back to that before the end of the programme. But in the meantime, James Horncastle, a very good morning to you. How are things?
Yeah, very well, thanks.
So Juventus versus Spurs, one of the games of the entire round, really, in the Champions League tonight. And you were writing in the London Independent this week about Massimiliano Allegri, and he could well have been sitting in the opposition dugout tonight.
Yeah, he could. I mean, after he got sacked by AC Milan in the spring of 2014, he came over to London, spent some time here, took in some games, and was believed to be looking for a job in the Premier League. He's never hidden his desire to try and experience abroad, and at that time, the most likely destination was Spurs, because they got rid of Andre Villas-Boas. Tim Sherwood had come in, and despite his amazing win ratio, which he reminds us of every time he's on TV, Spurs went looking in a different direction, and that was a time when they had Franco Baldini as their sort of technical director, and Baldini's a big admirer of Massimiliano Allegri. But in the end, they chose Pochettino, and we've seen Juventus take Allegri instead. So 4.5 years later, these two managers meet in what is a really fascinating Champions League tie.
Absolutely, and I think when you look at the state that Juventus were in, they were obviously in a very good position when Antonio Conte left, but it was more the timing of Conte's departure that people started to panic a little bit. They weren't sure if the Juventus dominance would continue, and it's the way Allegri has managed to preserve that which has got him most of his plaudits.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people associated Juventus' success with Juventus getting back to the top in Serie A with Antonio Conte, and when he resigned, there was a fear that with him, everything that they'd done would go. And instead, Allegri came in and for the first season, sort of didn't change all that much, but had big success. Came within a game of winning the treble. And he's done that twice in the last 3 years. And now this team very much is Allegri's team. I think, with the exception of Buffon, Chiellini, Barzagli and Marchisio. It's a completely different side that plays in a different way. And I think some Chelsea fans will be familiar with the experience that Juventus fans went through in that summer at this moment in time, with Conte having some of the same differences of opinion, let's say, with the hierarchy at Chelsea, which have obviously led to doubts about his own future at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah, we might come back to that a little bit later on in this piece, James, but just in terms of Conte and the transition to Allegri, I would imagine it's quite pleasurable for a Juventus fan to look at their European record over the last couple of seasons, because you've got that now infamous quote from Antonio Conte that winning the Champions League is like walking into a restaurant with a tenner, but dinner costs 100 quid per head. And Allegri's brought him to 2 Champions League finals, and Conte looks a tad silly as a result of that. But then you look at the man in the opposition dugout tonight, and Maurizio Pochettino, and what he's also been able to do with relatively limited resources.
Exactly. Conte, who is always clamouring for his owners to back him in the transfer market and spend big. We've heard him in the last week say he's a disaster at persuading owners to do that. Well, these guys have shown that you don't need big budgets, relatively speaking, to be competitive in the Champions League and to actually do better than he did whilst he was at Juventus. I remember when he was still working in Turin, he would often use the same sort of line of argument when it came to excusing, for example, going out in the quarterfinals to Bayern Munich and then going out in the group stages, that those teams had a lot more money than Juventus did at the time. But in that period, you saw Atletico Madrid reach the final. You saw Borussia Dortmund reach the final. Those are clubs that have similar budgets to Juventus at the time and Juventus now, and also Spurs as well. So, again, that is why there'll be another eye on what Conte does in the Champions League this year. I mean, that is where he has to prove himself.
Is Allegri the type of character who just puts the head down and gets on with things? During summers, during transfer windows, he's lost a huge amount of players over the 2-3 seasons in charge, from Pirlo, Vidal, Pogba, Morata, through to Bonucci and Alves from the team that got to the Champions League final last season. Does he ever let his frustration at losing those players show?
No. Yeah, he's an excellent company man without being a yes man. He's someone who accepts that his role is to coach the team, and he'll give their sporting director indications as to kind of the profile of the player that they want. But if they can't get him, he's not going to go out there and complain about it to the media and wash his dirty linen out in public. And that's very much the model at Juventus. They've had to sell some of their best players in order to compete regularly and strengthen the squad. Their squad now is so deep that even with the injuries that they have tonight, they can put out a very competitive first team. But I think this is a very underrated skill in managers. That was one of the reasons why Sir Alex Ferguson is held in such high regard, because of that ability to rebuild every 2 or 3 years. I think it's something that Allegri's done very well, and it's something that Simeone continues to do very well at Atletico Madrid.
Maurizio Pochettino said that characteristic of having that flexibility is something they have in common, the two managers. The team and the setup that they will go into tonight's game, Juventus, probably a world away from when Allegri took over the side, a 4-3-3 system, conceded just 1 goal in 16 games. What was it about their form at the start of the season that forced them into that change?
Well, they were conceding too many goals, which always makes Juventus uncomfortable, because even though they look to add skilled players who can score a lot of goals, Higuain last season, Douglas Costa, Federico Bernardeschi this season, Juventus always say that it's in their DNA to win games, by a goal to nil, rather than look to get into a shootout like you see the Spanish clubs do and win games 5-3. So that's what they were doing at the start of the season. They were scoring a lot of goals, but they didn't have control of games. And since they lost to Sampdoria away in sort of mid-November, they said enough is enough. They put an extra man in midfield, which was Blaise Matuidi, who's not going to be available for them tonight. And they've really locked down that defence. They've only conceded, as you mentioned, 1 goal in 16 games. In some of those, they haven't even conceded a single shot on target, which is pretty extraordinary, really. And it's keeping them competitive in the league, because Juventus go into this game second in Serie A, which again is not something that you associate with them, particularly over the last 6 years where they've won the league every year. And they're still 2 points better off than last year, which really goes to show how good and how competitive a title race there is in Italy at the moment, particularly in comparison with England, Germany, Spain and France, where everyone else is running away with it.
We've mentioned the sliding doors moment essentially earlier on with Allegri, but there seems to be one with Miralem Pjanic as well, and the way he was looked at from a Spurs point of view to potentially replace Luka Modric when he went to Real Madrid. But instead, he's still at Juventus. And is it fair to say now that instead of becoming the next Luka Modric, he's on this route to becoming the next Andrea Pirlo?
Yeah, I think, look, when Pirlo left to go and play in New York, they didn't replace him. And they missed having someone with that sort of sense of invention in midfield. Now, when Pjanic was signed from Roma, there was this idea that he was going to start playing in front of the defence, but he didn't look comfortable doing it. Often he was caught out on the ball, he didn't think quick enough, and they ended up playing either sort of in a midfield 3 or a midfield 2. So he had that little bit more protection. But this season, you can see he's a lot more confident doing that, and he is playing as a regista, as they say in Italy, that director of play. And he's really come on under Allegri. There was a time when he used to love taking too many touches, would play sideways passes. Now he's really mixing it up, plays forward a lot, plays long in the style of Pirlo. And of course, the big comparison that there's always going to be between him and Il Maestro is his free kick taking ability. He's one of the best in the world when it comes to scoring from free kicks. Juventus, to be fair, have a luxury in that role. We saw their big signing Federico Bernardeschi score from a free kick in the win against Fiorentina at the weekend. Dybala can do that when he's fit, but he's missing tonight. But yeah, Pjanic is I think remains one of those playmakers that still gets a little bit overlooked on the continent, but is very talented.
It might sound ridiculous considering they've only conceded 1 goal in their last 16 games, but tonight against Spurs and the way Spurs set up with the 3 players, Eriksen, Ali and Heung-min Son playing in behind Harry Kane, and Juventus going with that 4-3-3 formation, is there a possibility they could be overrun by those 3-4 attacking Spurs players?
I think it's going to be a really interesting battle in midfield. I know a lot of the focus in the media last few days has been on Kane and Higuain, who are in great form. But I think from a Juventus point of view, they look at Matuidi's absence as being a big one because Matuidi has so much energy, can cover a lot of ground and allows Juventus to be at their best in defence, where he can basically screen that back line, but also in attack because he gives someone like Sami Khedira the freedom to go forward, break into the box and score goals. Khedira's got 6 this season. And when Juventus have lost this year, it's tended to be when they haven't been able to get control of midfield and they've allowed the opponent's sort of 10s and wingers to have freedom, much more freedom in the final third between the lines. And so that'll be a real moment of concern. I think Chiellini, in his press conference yesterday, was asked about that sort of battle that he's going to have with Kane, and he says it's not about Kane, it's about Juventus against Tottenham. It's not about stopping one man. We have to stop them as a whole. So I think that is definitely going to be very interesting to see how 2 teams that, to be honest, are very, I'd say, quite similar. And it's to Spurs' immense credit that they go into this game, and it feels quite even though Juventus have been to 2 Champions League finals in the last 3 years.
The one last thing on Spurs and the absence of Toby Alderweireld. I'm not sure what you think in terms of how big a loss this is. Like, if he was available, do you reckon Maurizio Pochettino might have gone back to that back 3, which seemed to be so effective against Real Madrid?
I think both of these managers, as Pochettino said, love to have flexibility. And we talked about Juventus being in this 4-3-3. I think some of the injuries that they've had going into this game, Barzagli, Cuadrado, might not catch the eye, but they're really important for him because they allow Massimiliano Allegri the freedom to change in-game to a back 3. And I think that's what Toby Alderweireld, being fit and being in the squad and in Turin, would have done for Spurs, because it's a hell of an advantage if you, say, get an away goal, playing as they are at the moment, to then be able to go and play with a back 3 and completely shut up shop. So that is going to be a miss. And Alderweireld's a big part of their build-up play as well. Those sort of big diagonal passes that he plays, out to the wing, allow them to beat the press. Because I think it is going to be a very aggressive game for them tonight, where Juventus, particularly in the first 15, 20 minutes, will really have a go at Spurs. The Allianz Stadium isn't the biggest, it's 41,000, but it's one of the loudest, it's one of the most intense atmospheres that you actually will find, which might come as a surprise to Spurs. So, I think not having that option will be a bit of a shame for Pochettino.
On Basel versus Manchester City then, James, Pep Guardiola today has been a little bit more quiet in Vincent Kompany in terms of Manchester City's chances in going all the way in the competition. Perhaps that's just a little bit of the ghost of Monaco from last season haunting him. But Leroy Sané is fit. That's a huge addition to them, even just going ahead and building up that flexibility in the team once again, where Sané is fully bedded back into the team. They will beat Basel, you would suspect. But in terms of the general landscape in Europe, how high up the pecking order are Manchester City?
Well, they're the favourites for the competition. I think everyone expects this to be an unprecedented season for City, where they realise the dreams of the owners in Abu Dhabi, where this project not necessarily comes to its completion, but to its fulfilment. Because I think most people would agree that City sort of play the best football in Europe, play a very innovative style, which again we associate with Pep Guardiola, and have the budget and the depth to go all the way. And we saw that in the January transfer window. You mentioned Kompany. They bring in Aymeric Laporte. They don't seem to have a problem paying 60 million for him when they didn't want to pay 20, 25 for Alexis Sanchez. I think City have so many weapons. It's very difficult to see them at least not getting to the final. I think. Of course, a lot of things need to go their way, but they seem to just have so much about them that I think their time is now, and they've earned the right to get this favourable draw in the round of 16 against Basel, considering how almost perfect they were in the group stages. I think they'll probably look at this game, no disrespect to Basel, in the same way as they did the Wolves and Bristol City games. Which, if there's any kind of complacency, it might be a little bit closer than we expect. But City should be able to comprehensively beat them.
Just a word on Antonio Conte and his future. This time last week, it almost felt like there was an inevitability that he was going to end up leaving Chelsea quite quickly. Now that storm seems to have passed, they had a comfortable win last night, and that Champions League game with Barcelona is coming on the horizon very quickly. Is your sense now that he's there till the end of the season?
Well, look, this is going to be a very delicate period for Chelsea, because they've got the Champions League ties against Barcelona, and in between them, they've got trips to Manchester to play City and United. I think the win that they had last night against West Brom is to not a reprieve, but it's the calm before the storm. I think with Conte, look, he has resigned from positions in the past. We spoke about that at Juventus. He did it at Atalanta as well. I think this time there's a lot more money on the table, which he would have to walk away from, which you can probably imagine him not being too keen to do. And from Chelsea's point of view, sacking him means paying a lot of money, and right now, is there anyone better on the market to bring in now? I don't think there is. I think to some extent, the end game that is foreseeable is they go to the end of the season, and Conte gets a big offer. He walks away. Chelsea don't have to pay compensation, and everybody's kind of happy from it. I think some of the options that were there for Conte in the past, AC Milan, not as attractive as they were, say, at the start of the season when they were spending €220 million. They've had a very difficult year and will probably come under financial fair play sanction. Does he want to go straight back into the Italy job? They'll want to have conversation with him, but I think he has other career goals at this moment in time. I think what's really interesting is Real Madrid PSG. The outcome of that could have as much of a bearing on Conte's sort of mid-term future than what happens between Chelsea and Barcelona.
Do you think Chelsea as a football club, James, are in a much weaker position now than they were in the past when they've always been going through this flux of managers really during the Abramovich era, but at least in the past they had the dressing room leaders of John Terry and Frank Lampard, and there was a certain uniformity to the dressing room mood, I'd imagine, when they were in the camp. But now it's hard to point out who is the John Terry or who is the Frank Lampard that will keep the dressing room somewhat serene when there's the madness going on in the boardroom.
Yeah, I think that there is an element of truth into that. I think this is very different to what happened a couple of years ago with Jose Mourinho, because these players are behind Antonio Conte. We're not having the quote-unquote palpable discord that was there then. It's more of a disconnect between Conte and the board when it comes to recruitment, because he thought his hand would be strengthened last year by winning the league against all odds. Everyone at the start of the season thought it was going to be about Mourinho. They thought it was going to be about Pep. And instead, he doesn't feel that he's got his sort of top targets signed. So Chelsea, look, they've normalised change. They've been even been able to be successful doing that throughout the entire Abramovich era. I just think Chelsea now are in a different stage. They're having to fund and build a new stadium, which even for someone of Abramovich's wealth is very expensive to do in West London. He is someone who has his own personal wealth. He doesn't have the wealth of a state behind him in the way that, say, Man City and Paris Saint-Germain do. So, Conte complains about, joining these big clubs when they're in moments of, I think you used the word carestia in Italian, which it can be translated as famine. Which is a bit rich, really, compared. When you still look at what Chelsea have spent over the last two windows, but of course that pales in comparison with what the Manchester clubs have done in the same period.
Yeah, for sure. James Horncastle, thanks a million for taking the call and enjoy the football tonight.
Pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Interesting stuff there. Antonio Conte, it feels like he just bought himself a little bit more time last night.
Yeah, as James touched upon it, they're heading into a massive couple of weeks. If it was to all go very horribly wrong and they were to take a bit of a beating against Barcelona, which isn't beyond the realms of possibility, and also lose to City and United, it probably would come to a pretty quick end. I just think Conte is such a good manager tactically. He's not going to let that happen. It'll be a tight game against Barcelona, and that game against Old Trafford, I'm doing that game Sunday week, like Conte against Mourinho.
Well, it's Sunday week, is it? It's come up so soon.
So it's come around very quickly. I suspect he'll be there till the end of the season. I say an amicable enough parting of ways.
I can't wait for that game because it kind of just felt so far in the distance when this thing sparked up, and now it's only a week away. That I just hope they don't get hammered by Barcelona in the first leg and he's gone after that.
No, that won't happen. It feels like it's died a death a little bit between Conte and Mourinho, and we're suddenly seeing a very placid Jose Mourinho over the last couple of weeks. The build-up to that game will be interesting to see if they start biting off each other again. Well,
they're going to be asked about each other for sure, and I can't imagine that Jose Mourinho is going to lie down too quickly.
No, if Conte goes for him, he'll bite back.
Which he will.
It'll be brilliant.
Yeah, I know. Juventus versus Spurs. I didn't actually get Horncastle's take on which way it's going to go, but you look at Spurs as where they were during that great Real Madrid game, which will go down in the annals of Spurs history as one of their greatest ever nights. And it seemed everything was just in a great place at that time. And then it seemed like that was a catalyst for everything to go wrong on the domestic side of things. Pochettino's book was kind of thought of as the reason. But it was just after that Real Madrid game you started to think, right, well, they're going to go no further. And then suddenly the last 2 weeks, Spurs are back and you're starting to think they can really do this.
Yeah, and I think they've got a brilliant chance of beating Juventus over 2 legs. I know Allegri has turned them around over the last 3-4 months and that they don't concede any goals, but they're not going to be able to keep Spurs at bay over 2 games. It's a shame that Alvarez isn't back. For me, he's the best defender in the Premier League. I'm surprised they haven't taken a little bit of a risk with him. Maybe they're thinking further down the track that they're planning past Juventus. And it does show how far Spurs have come. That Juventus, Champions League finalists twice in the last 3 seasons, that Spurs, I think, are probably going into this as favourites.
Like you mentioned Alderweireld there, and I think it was David Heitner in yesterday's Guardian just pointing out that Pochettino's just got such a high bar for where your fitness needs to be at before you get back in the team. You look at Danny Rose, you look at Eric Lamela. Alderweireld basically saying to him, I'm fit, but Pochettino's like, you're not fit enough.
Yeah, which is understandable as well, because there's going to be 2 games a week every week between now and the end of the season. I just think Alderweireld is so strong defensively, but also he's so important to Spurs attacking wise. He sets up so many opportunities from the back for Dele Alli and Harry Kane, which they lose with Davinson Sanchez in there. Now maybe Sanchez would survive at 3 in the back. It could be an absolute cracker, especially if Spurs go for them, because, and I think they will, if Alderweireld had started, Heung-min Son probably wouldn't have, and they would have gone, as you say, with the 3 at the back and 2 in midfield and just Ali and Eriksen in behind Harry Kane. They're probably going to go for it tonight. They're probably going to really try and get that away goal and put the pressure on Juventus, and I think they'll do it. I think over the 2 legs Spurs will have more than enough of them. Absolutely.
Well, that's a big prediction there. So Spurs to go through against Juventus?
Yes, 100%. I'm all over it.
We're going to go down to Pyeongchang in just a moment to speak with Cliona Foley. But before we speak to Cliona, she's been catching up with Seamus O'Connor, who was in action in South Korea this morning.
Tell us how complicated that last trick is. What are you doing in it?
So it's the biggest trick of my run. It's a frontside 1260, which is 3.5 rotations. So it's a big maneuver for sure. And here in Pyeongchang was the first time I had done it in over 2 years. So to come out here and do a run that I haven't done in years is incredible.
Cliona Foley, good morning to you.
Morning, how are you?
Not too bad. Seamus O'Connor there, as we just heard from, he was in the half pipe a little bit earlier on today. He didn't get through, but I presume it was one of his best personal performances.
Yeah, and he was really disappointed because he was 15th in this event at the last Winter Olympics, but 16 months ago he smashed his knee really badly in a crash down in New Zealand, had a complete knee reconstruction with all the ligaments had gone. So to get back to this level, I think he was disappointed to finish 18th, particularly because at the halfway point after the first run, he was in 13th position, just 1.25 points off a place in the final. The top 12 went to the final. So that last trick that he tried to pull out, he just put his hand down and he lost a few points on it. And so his first score was his best score, 65.5, I think it was.
You mentioned on yesterday morning show, Cliona, about the incredible wins that are there in Pyeongchang at the moment, and you could see in some of the events yesterday, like the women's slopestyle, for example, was absolutely mental. Was that a big factor as well this morning when it comes to the half pipe, or is it an event that's usually pretty immune from the wind?
No, not. But there was wind up there, all right. It's in a completely different place, right beside the other one, but in a much more protected area. There was wind there this morning, but that had nothing to do with it. Actually, I think it was just probably a little bit of nerves. And on that second run, a lot of people go for their big move to try and up their score, and very often it just doesn't work. Actually, the standard this morning was sensational, and Sean White, the granddaddy, if you like, of half pipes, he pulled out a 98.50 with his second run. He's twice the age of some of the young Japanese guys who are up against him probably in the final tomorrow, and he set the place alight. The standard was incredible. There was 5 athletes scored over 90 out of 100, so the standard was just incredibly high.
I'd imagine the buzz around Sean White is something large, Cliona.
Phenomenal, and he actually came down and I noticed he got your opposition there had Irish stickers on their thing, and one of his group wanted a little Irish shamrock, so he gave them and they got an interview with him this morning. But he came down and he did interviews with absolutely everybody. He's known as the Flying Tomato. He was written off after Sochi because he only finished 4th in Sochi, and the fact he's back here and competing against all these kids and threw it down to them this morning in a 98.50 was phenomenal. So I would think the final tomorrow is going to be between himself, James Scotty, the Australian, and one of the brilliant young 19-year-old Ayuma Hirano, the Japanese, and Seamus said he reckons the goal will be decided between the 3 of them. So look, at a tough day for him because he has put so much into his rehab to get back here. I asked him would he go for a 3rd Olympics, and we both said if Sean White can do it, come back at 32. He's still only 20, so he has time to come back. And I think if he'd had maybe another 8 or 10 months this year before he came back into this, he might have made that final.
Yeah, it's sure that'll definitely be one to watch tomorrow. Sean White can pick up a medal there. But also this morning, Pat McMillan and Thomas Westgard were in action, Cliona.
Yeah, well, Thomas Westgard's actually in action in about 10 minutes. I'm running across the road here. He's racing in the 1.4 kilometres this
sprint event in cross country. So he hasn't gone out yet. Pat Macmillan competed in the combined Alpine this morning, which is usually combined. It's a downhill run with a slalom run, and he was happy enough. He was 61st in the downhill run, but he missed a gate halfway down the slalom, and he wasn't too bothered because really all of his concentration is going into the downhill, the men's downhill, which he's competing in on Thursday, and then he has the Super G on Friday as well. So he was really happy to get in a good run on the downhill today. He said he really felt good on it, and the snow was really good.
Well, we'll let you go and catch Thomas Westgard there in action. Cliona, thanks a million for the update. Appreciate it. Cliona Foley there live from Pyeongchang. Have you been watching any of the madness?
Very little so far, but you're very upset about the weather conditions. You're seriously concerned about the health and safety.
Of course I am. You
should get yourself over there, maybe put on a hard hat, yellow jacket, and start asking some questions.
So there was one fall yesterday. I just turned on the BBC when I got home, and it was on the final slope or ramp, whatever you call it, in the slope style in the women's event. And the competitor went up the ramp and missed her landing and fell down on her back. And I was like, oh, that looks sore. Until the commentator said, yeah, that's about the height of falling off a 2-story roof. And I'm like, wow, okay. And then he went on to explain that the reason why she fell was because of the insane wind conditions. At which point, the next competitor who was going up to that ramp and was like, nah, not having it. Didn't have enough wind at her back. It was just coming in her face too much. And she had to just kind of turn away from it completely. And you start to think to yourself...
Was that her out of it?
Yeah. And you just start to think to yourself, this is...
These are extreme sports.
Okay. They're extreme sports, but they don't have to have extreme consequences. Of course they're extreme sports, but when the weather conditions are making falling on your back from a 2-story height a regular occurrence, then this thing needs to be postponed.
Well, how regular was it? It was one person.
I think like 5 of the 21. I think 5 of the 21 competitors managed to do an error-free ride, and I'm not sure if that's a usual number or not. I presume it's quite low, 5 out of 21 in whatever an Olympic final. But yeah, you could see as well in the ski jumping, the things were lower, the results were lower, and it was just madness. It was a full-on blizzard there yesterday. That the only thing that seems to be safe are the indoor events.
Has the curling started yet?
It has. It started yesterday.
Oh, I love a bit of
Didn't
curling.
catch too much of it now because it's too addictive.
Well, you want to wait till it gets towards the finals. Did I hear right that Sean White's nickname is the Quiet Tomato?
No, the Flying Tomato. The Quiet Tomato really would have been something, yeah.
Still, the Flying Tomato.
It is
the worst nickname in sport.
It's bad. It's not quite as bad as the Quiet Tomato somehow. Most tomatoes I find are quite quiet. They don't tend to make much noise.
I didn't make any sense.
No,
the Flying Tomato doesn't make much sense either.
It really didn't. That would be something else if Sean White managed to pull out a medal out of somewhere. But before we go off, we're on air for just another couple of minutes. But the PFA are under a little bit of fire. Particularly because of some of the salaries that have been handed out.
Yeah, this is sort of an annual story at this stage about the amount of money that Gordon Taylor is getting paid as CEO of the PFA. Last year, so this was their latest figures, 2016-2017, he got paid £2.2 million, which included a £777,000 bonus, a basic wage of £1.2 million, and also £271,000 in employers' national insurance contributions, the equivalent of £6,000 a day, or £42,308 a week, giving Taylor parity with many of the highest paid Premier League players that he represents. Now, the anger around this, and I think he's actually taken a pay cut. Last year it was 3.3 million, this year 2.2 million, which is fairly substantial. It comes after the PFA contributed just £100,000 towards concussion and head injury research in more than 5 years, a matter which is obviously dominating the lives of many former professional footballers. Interestingly with Taylor, and I've spoken to quite a few former professional footballers about his salary and the job that he does, and you never hear any of them really criticise him. Now, Graham Lasso is quoted in The Guardian as saying it's scandalous. Former Crystal Palace chairman Simon Jordan saying it's unjustifiable. Nothing personal. The Dalai Lama could be the chief executive of a union on that money, and I would still say it was wrong on so many levels. Now, not surprising to hear a chairman of a football club criticising somebody else earning a substantial amount of money. But Taylor, by all accounts, does a very good job for his members. Like, he negotiated one of the great business deals. So the PFA used to receive about 15% of all television money. Now they're getting around 17, 18 million quid a year, if not more, out of the new television deal.
70, 80.
17 or 18, I think, out of the new television. Maybe it's more than that. I'll have to check the figures
5
again.
billion total. It doesn't seem like a huge...
Yeah, it's a good point. Maybe it's far more substantial than that. Either way, he's done a brilliant deal on behalf of his constituency, which are professional footballers. And also, I've heard from a lot of them that if you do suffer a serious injury, if you do have trouble, they come to your aid. Now, we've seen that on the other side, that you can literally get away with anything as a professional footballer, and the PFA will not criticise you or will not come out against you. They'll back you every single step of the way. So maybe the people who are paying the fees, if you're a professional footballer in the Premier League, how much do you think it costs to join the PFA?
I couldn't even hazard a guess. You have to pay to join the PFA.
Well, it's been a member of a union,
I suppose. Yeah. Well, you've got first of all, if you're a top player, you've got agents to look after you. You don't need to be part of a players' union. I don't know, like 10 grand,
£150.
Is that all?
And you get all the benefits,
which are being
death in service cover and all that.
150 grand, but I suppose
£150.
£150, sorry, but that goes all the way down to amateur level, I presume. It's not just
professional footballers.
Professional Footballers Association, yeah.
So if you're in I think you have to be within one of the top 4 divisions to be a member of the PFA.
Right. Greg Clark doesn't like him. Wasn't there something in terms of parliamentary privilege about Greg Clark talking about Gordon Taylor and saying that the PFA refused to pay the counselling of a child abuse victim, which grabbed a lot of headlines at that time when there was the committee into sport that happened last year, in the middle of last year. Greg Clark used that, so which kind of struck me as, first of all, it's a very important thing to point out, especially given the amount of money he's on, and second of all, it's very interesting that the FA and the PFA are at loggerheads like that.
Well, I think we only have to look here with the FAI and the PFAI to see that maybe it's not that unusual. When you look at the PFA, all the outside bodies are generally very critical of them. What the PFA, their sole aim is to protect their members. And at times when they go down to the lower leagues, and you can definitely quite like 100,000 for one of the main issues for former retired players in terms of dementia and Alzheimer's over 5 years is simply
not good enough.
But the members don't seem to have an issue with his pay packet.
Yeah, that is a very interesting element. The politics behind this is certainly something that stuck out to me. Before we wrap up today, I want to chat to you about Liverpool, because you were at their game against Southampton on Sunday, of course. Porto is a clash that will be a very, very disappointing result if Liverpool don't get through, basically.
Yeah, I think they will expect to go through. I think they're expecting to go pretty deep into the competition at this stage. And Jurgen Klopp's putting a lot of stock in the big Anfield Tuesday, Wednesday nights and the atmosphere and the emotion and how that carries his players. I think he's right. On the other side, you can see some pretty dramatic nights and Liverpool looking comfortable in games and giving up cheap goals. I definitely think they have it in them. The way they're set up against the top European sides who won't sit back, which will suit Liverpool. These teams are not going to put 6-7 players behind the ball. They're going to try and play football. They're used to having the ball at their feet. It'll give Liverpool the space in behind to really go and exploit it. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Liverpool go semi-finals in this season's Champions League. Yeah. I think they'll beat Porto.
I'm disappointed it's on the same night as Madrid PSG. I think Porto Liverpool has the potential to be the dark horse of this round in terms of a neutral contest.
Are you going to be the hipster?
No, definitely. Of course not. Of course I'm going to watch Real Madrid PSG. Like that's.
But the hipster choice is to watch Real Madrid PSG.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
If you're
the hipster choice is always not to watch the English team.
No, not in this case. Real Madrid PSG, Neymar at the Bernabeu, like for example.
You'll be able to see that all the time next season.
Well, there you go. No way.
I presume the TV coverage is Liverpool-Porto.
I actually don't know. You would think that in Ireland, RTE have the rights for the Wednesday night fixture, obviously. They're probably going to show Liverpool. To be honest, if you're an Irish broadcaster, you're probably going to show Liverpool, fair. But Real Madrid PSG is a far better contest. If you're not a Liverpool fan, like even if you're a Manchester United fan, you want to watch Real Madrid PSG, right?
I think a lot of... Maybe if you're just a Manchester United fan, I think you'll watch the English team. If you're a fan of...
That's what I mean. If you're an English Premier League football,
I think you'll watch Real Madrid PSG.
All right, interesting one. Well, we've got tomorrow morning to discuss this as well. You can get in touch at Off the Ball if you think Nathan's right or wrong on this one. Which is the hipster choice?
I think the hipster choice is definitely the hipster choice is always the non-English team.
Okay, the interesting take. I disagree wholeheartedly on that. I will be watching Real Madrid against PSG, and I'm the furthest thing away from a hipster, Nathan.
Really? Really, Eoin?
Yes, I am. I'll maintain that. But thank you very much for coming in this morning.
It was a pleasure.
What's your plan for today? Eat a lot of pancakes.
Oh, as many as possible. Maybe go to crappy crepes down in Meath.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the best crepes in town. The best crepes in the country, in fact, I would suspect. What do you get?
That's the day done, is what I understand. Once he finished at 9:10, home.
You can go home.
Well,
you've worked you're going to be working a 7-day week essentially this week because you were travelling yesterday.
Oh yeah,
and working hard this morning with me. Yes, thank you very much.
Cheers,
and we'll see you again soon, no doubt. We will be back, of course, tomorrow morning at 7:45, looking ahead to Real Madrid, PSG, and maybe a little bit of a look at Porto, Liverpool again. Kenny Cunningham is live and dangerous, it says in my script, in studio tonight on a big night of Champions League, as we've mentioned. And Arnold Rampersad, he'll be profiling the tennis trailblazer Arthur Ashe.
Do you want a Kenny Cunningham stat?
Yeah.
It came in during the week. Kenny Cunningham has played more games than any outfield player in the Premier League without scoring a goal.
Wow. I don't think we can really top that. That's some way to finish the show. The radio show, as I said, on News Talk, live from 7 o'clock. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 7:45 a.m. Good luck.